So Matt and I today are going to be going over the brand new Accra Shogun range. Now these are very, very recent to market, very top end materials and very interesting shafts as well. And we've had a base hit, but we're going to go through each, going to hit the blue, green and red range, talk about what they do and why they do it, but most importantly what you can expect when to experience when you hit them yourselves. So quite different swing speeds. Anyone has a different swing speed to him, but really, I mean, interesting shafts these.
Yeah, I mean they're this is their kind of their answer to the super premium that they've had in the past, but they haven't necessarily offered for the last few years. This is their let us show you exactly what we can do with the technology that they've been developing for. They've been in the industry for 20 years. Yeah. So this is their proper flagship. This is their look at what we can do. So let's look at what they can do.
Yeah, and it's a part of the market Accra have always operated in. They came into it with that. I mean, those of us that are old enough to remember it, the SE80, one of their first ranges was a really kind of standout shaft when it was launched, and it's always one that they go back to as their it's like this kind of principle. I think this time round it was known so much for responsive tip, very low torque. So responsive tip for a bit of launch, very low torque for control and low spin. And it's one that I played at that we all remember, and the whole industry kind of goes all misty-eyed about, because it's just a great product. And I don't think they've ever quite had something that had that combination of feel and performance. So
the initial test, there's a couple of these that look like they might be getting close to that. Let's just work our way through, and we'll start with the blue, and we'll
hit in the chat.
we'll go through.
Yeah. So, as range-wise, Accra have in their GX, which was FX, gone into GX now, that range of blue, highest launch, green, mid-launch, red, low launch, and that's continued with the Shogun range. So we're going to start with the blue, which is the higher launch, generally the lighter weights. So we've got in this we're going to hit the 42 in the M2 and the M0, and you'll understand why we're hitting both of those when we get to the second one, but Matt's going to start off with the M2. So those that don't know, the M0, M2 is the flex denomination. So it's called the kind of universal flex, where the 3 is regular, 4 stiff, 5 X, 2 A flex, 1 L, I guess, and then 0 is soft L. So very responsive.
I would call it noodle.
So we'll start off with a kind of the soft regular one, really.
So initially, just the initial waggle test that I guess everyone does whenever you walk into a shop and you pick a driver up and you give it a waggle. There's definitely that responsiveness in the bottom half that you kind of expect out of an M2 or a soft regular, but it's still pretty, through the handle section, it still feels pretty firm. As much as you can't get a huge amount from that initial waggle, there's definitely something up here that's telling me I'm gonna not lose the top end of the golf club.
Yep.
Let's give it a whirl.
And this is really the focus of this series, is they've gone to their kind of essentially super top-end materials, and the reason they do that is to get the combination of responsiveness and then stability. You've got to go high-grade material. That means thinner layers, it means different directions of weave, it means more graphite to resin component.
So straight away that first swing felt very responsive. As soon as I put the speed in through the hands, I could feel the shaft really bend, and then as it came down and released all that energy, there was a real snap through the ball, but it wasn't a loose feel that you would potentially expect with something that typically comes in at this flex grade. There was still a firm feel through.
Because I think that's always been my, I guess, the difficulty for someone with some speed with these, and they're with the soft flex lightweight shafts that actually a lot of the long drive guys are using a similar kind of product, and I believe one of these is already out there being used quite a bit, and they've developed some of it off that, is that there's that looseness at impact which just feels out of control, which, as you described there, as you said, there isn't that kind of floppiness through impact that feels like there's just a noodle at the ball.
Let's give it one more, and then I'll let them see someone who's more normal give it a swing. Yeah, like I feel like that doesn't get away from me. That actually tracks quite nicely, given that it's a 46 gram.
Yeah, and if you think spin wise, this is a 9-degree TSR3 that we're using. 2.8 for you for one that stayed right isn't that high.
No, it does. It does a very good job at just managing that. That spin.
We're going to switch around, yeah.
I have to say, the initial test we did with them yesterday, was quite impressive as to one, how stable they all were, bar one shaft that we'll get onto at some point through the session. But it's one that's designed to not be, not be stable in that sense. Surprised just how consistent they felt through swing after swing. There wasn't, you didn't have 5 swings and one of them just feel like the shaft was doing something completely different, even at the lower rate flexes within their range. They all felt so stable through the ball.
I think that's the thing, actually. Often in the soft flexes, the tendencies, you just feel all of the shaft moving around. There's actually here, this bit, as you described, this bit's pretty stable. It's a very even weight point as well in this. It's very even balance. So let's get the... Yeah, that's an incredibly solid impact position for a shaft of that design. Yeah, you're normally expecting a real kind of flick at the bottom, but actually that feels like the contact feels like a heavier, more stable shaft.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the premium materials thing comes in, is they can keep the weight down, but get that feel of something that is much heavier and firmer. That's
so where the lighter a little bit, but there's no loss of, there's no instability of the club face. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me, is you get that sense of that load, and I don't like the term release, but you can feel the shaft load and unload, but it doesn't feel like the bottom's flapping around all over the place. That's really, really solid. So for a shaft of that weight, you get lots of feedback. It's going to feel for slightly kind of quieter loaders of the shaft, some more rotational body turn swing, that you can actually get something that gives a bit of kick, but that's got some forward to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, should we have a look at the green?
Go green, yeah.
I think let's go. So we've got in the green, we've got the 52 in the M3, and then we've got the 62 in the M4. The initial test says to me, let's do the 52 next. Because we both thought when we first hit it, there was something quite interesting about this that we haven't necessarily seen out of other options that are in the same weight bracket.
Shall I carry on?
Yeah, why not? You're feeling loose. Let's keep the numbers comparable here for at least the next couple of swings. So interesting. Again, I know that last one you kind of got a little hard on the head, so it was 2-1. But that previous one, the first one that you hit pretty good, 2-9 for you. That's a pretty good spin number on something that is actively adding a little bit of launch and spin through. Yeah,
and that's the one thing you can expect from the softer profiles, is the head kicks under a bit more. It's what we've always seen from the soft profile shafts, is it adds spin. Yeah. But that's not that spinny for a head that's a degree more than I use. Yes. And in that lighter shaft. So this one's definitely, there's a bit more in the bottom half of it, a little bit. It's not tip weighted, but you can definitely feel there's a bit more guts to it. There's a little less of that kick. But it still feels a pretty inoffensive balance, I would describe it as. Tugged it a little bit, but that's so hittable. for
2-4 on spin, 266 carry rather than, okay, the previous was for you, launched it too much, but then you're at 254. You've picked up 12 because you can stay on. It stays on top of it more.
Best part of 10 grams lighter than one I use. That feels very, very. I say it's solid without being hard. It's a really interesting sensation. Neck that a little bit, but
that'll be interesting.
I can get into that.
Okay, and it does spin up because of the
healed,
neck.
but you can really feel like you can work that and get something back from the shaft, get something back from it, but have to get a heel strike and for it to feel like it holds on. But that's the premium materials.
Let me give it a blast. Be interesting to see what happens for me at the difference in swing speed, how the M3 feels and loads and unloads through impact for someone that is ultimately 15, 16 mile an hour quicker when I'm still getting loose.
You had to add the last bit, didn't you? it's interesting, the sound off the face belies the shaft that it is. And by that I mean that a lot of what we do in here, you can hear the contact and the solidity of it, and like if something's a little bit loose, it's a higher pitch note, it's a tinnier note. That's a really gutsy sound.
There's a lot of shaft to hit with here, even in the 54 gram.
Yeah, there
is a lot that you can hit with.
But without it feeling, and this is the thing, you always, to get the stability, you always had to give up feel. Historically, that was always the pro and con. The kind of the decision to make was, do you go for something that feels nice but it isn't quite as stable, or the stability and give up your feel?
You try and chase one a little more. I turned it over.
Yeah, you can see it's a little light for you.
Yeah. But I've got it a little low.
Yeah. But ball speed retention.
Yeah, I mean, 1.48 smash on
that's long way from being middle.
That wilder shape is.
Yeah, it's a long way from being middle. So again, that's the quality of material holding onto the club face, and you lose a bit of that deformation, a bit of the twisting. So actually, the ball speed, the energy still goes into the ball. That
didn't feel like feedback. When you go to something that light, normally I can feel when the strike's off centre. That didn't feel that off centre.
You don't get the kick.
Given that it's an M3 and it's their, ultimately for them, probably their middle flex within this, you don't feel it. Let me see if I can actually get one somewhere near the centre of the face. Still a bit low. I blame it on your tee height.
But again, a little low on the face. That spin's not kicked up. You're still, still very, very efficient. Yeah.
Let's have a look at the 60, because I think that will be more.
Let's go up a notch on weight.
That will be more my bracket.
But I think the green that as a shaft, I think is very usable for an awful lot of golfers.
Yeah. Assuming they've kept that feel into the 60, which from the initial test we did, definitely felt that way. I think you'll see there's a good option there for pretty much everyone in terms of if they need that mid-balance shaft, then I think they're in they've got options across the board.
Yeah, I think. I'm saying this is really where we start to see the fruits of the labours over the years of material developments and better understanding of what design actually does what to performance. The head's improving, the shaft's improving, and so the ball speed retention from those strikes for that shaft relative to your swing, to put it into context, very, very impressive.
So initial pickup feel on this, heavier in the tip end.
Yeah.
That
proportionate to the 53.
Yes.
Yeah.
That kind of iconic waggle test you do. There's not a lot of give going through the whole shaft. It's definitely, you can tell it's stepped up. That firm nature of the midsection of the shaft is definitely.
So I think from their numbers, the midsection, tip section performance stays really quite similar through the weights, but the butt section rigidity,
right.
And so as we go through the profiles, that's where it really ramps up.
Gotcha. Necked it. It feels very stable. It doesn't feel like there's a lot
going.
Spin
stability for a heel strike. Very
doesn't feel like there's a lot going on there at all in terms of give and release and unload, however you want to.
Yeah.
Just not got the swing today, clearly.
That looked more hit. Yeah, again, so against that, it's an interesting note off the shaft so far. It's a real kind of, let's say, gutsy. I guess it's such a solid contact sound from back here, and the shaft really does change the note off the club head of the ball strike-wise. These are Pro V1Xs, so are normally a little bit of a harder, tinnier sound as well. So yeah, really interesting hearing that contact. Let's see.
I think for me, it's kind of, they are where maybe the GX series went a little away from Accra's traditional pattern in terms of how the feel kind of staggers its way, the blue being a little higher, then the green into the mid, then red will often go back up towards a mid-high. The GX,
balance point, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, balance point. The GX I felt like went a little more tip end.
Yeah.
The Shogun seems to be back to that traditional Accra balance profile. So if you've played them in the past, it will very much be pick the series that you played in the past, and I can imagine these will fit very similar, and they'll just play a little firmer in feel, but they'll fit very much into that old balance profile.
Yeah, you say the GX, I think part of that was they wanted to get that rigidity up in the Red series and in the 300 series, and by part of the give and take of that was the balance went away from. However, clearly this was in the offing, so as you say, there's
it's always good to have two within the same sort of family of colour systems. It's always nice to have two different feel profiles.
Yeah. So you still get a little bit through the middle of it, but it's a very connected feel. Rotten strike, low heel. But again, you don't. It's a horrible strike, but you don't get that. You don't definitely don't get that.
That's the thing. When you said to me, the strike, the flight came out and the strike and the numbers didn't quite match, and it was actually that didn't feel that bad at all.
Just hold the finish and pretend.
Yeah.
Until you see the spin number, and it was a horrible one. And do want a little bit more out the bottom. It's very, very.
It's a good number for one out the bottom.
I could say, I mean, that's
on spin, and you've almost missed it
down there somewhere. But again, ball speed maintenance, spin maintenance. That ultimately, from what shafts can do, the better they hold onto the head at impact, the less deformation, the better those numbers get. Ultimately, that's where the shaft can add to it. So everyone talks about heads for forgiveness, but actually a shaft. Granted, you've got to go great materials to do it, but the shaft can help with that too. Let's see if I can actually
Let's see if you can find the middle one.
Face. Tough ask.
Oh, that sounded pretty good.
Yeah, it's an interesting feel. It's in that it's stable without being harsh. You get something back. You get a little pop, but you know the shaft's giving you something, but it hasn't got flick. Yeah, it's a really interesting feel.
I think for me that's the difference between the blue and the green. I think the blue, you definitely had that bit of extra pop and that kind of flick that came with it, whereas the green is a lot more stable through. If the unload that happens is very stable, it's very consistent through pretty much the whole shaft. Okay, yes, the butt section won't be, just by the nature of if that was releasing, then you'd have it in two pieces in your hand within about 3 swings. But through the rest of it, there's definitely a uniform release.
Yeah, definitely.
Which the blue definitely doesn't have.
No.
It'll be interesting to see with the red as to how that has to help, because in theory that's then going to be even more uniform based on how they've always, or through the FX and even into the GX, how they've followed that pattern of the feel of release. I'm expecting the red will be even more uniform, if at all.
Yeah, it's developing that load and kick through the tip section of the blue to get that little bit extra height and launch and response. The green pairs that back a bit, and then as we're about to the red, again, they themselves have said, look, this is a stable beast, this thing. It's going, as we referred to the SE80 earlier, that very low torque, very butt stable. I think the smoothness of that SE80, sorry for those who hark back to it, but was such a key factor of that shaft. I think that'll be the interesting. Am I going to carry on?
You carry on.
Will be the interesting element to this. I mean, say we know design-wise this is a very, very strong shaft, and that is that. Whereas in the green you get that little bit of load, a little bit of flow. The
red, to me, when I had a couple of hits with
this, it's a serious beast.
It almost felt a little bit like the RPG Gold.
Yeah.
In the sense that there is not a lot there to really give any feel of the release. It's very much up in the handle and.
I mean, that bit I can try and get
if you do everything you can to try and make it release.
The handle, and that bit doesn't give out at all. But again, doesn't move heavy.
So for context, this is the 62 M4, so it's the same spec and family weight as the green that we were just testing. I think this comes in slightly. Is it slightly heavier, or is it the same?
I think deadweight's a fraction heavier.
We were in 62, and what's that one on the...
65.
Okay,
yeah.
so it is a fraction heavier.
I mean, this is one where swinging it, for me, the reaction to how stable that is, and bear in mind that I like a little bit of movement under the handle and stable at the tip, is that it makes me want to get into it. But ultimately, this is designed for someone who loads it heavy.
Yeah.
And so that it's not going to give out and stays with.
And ultimately, that's where I think it fits the old 300 series story. Because it is it's not going to give you a lot of feel in terms of load and unload. It's going to be very, very much a uniform all the way through. It very much fits that old school, the older FX 300 feel.
Yeah, and again, interesting. It has that absolute, I would say, rigidity, stability to it. But again, it still has that kind of quietened down note off the head, rather than the high-pitched, tinny, harsh sound that we normally get out of a shaft like this. And so it's a lot of shaft. These red range, the Shogun Reds, are something that, if you're a strong swinger, strong loader that doesn't need, tip heavy setup like a lot of the strong tip shafts get to, because it's put material down the bottom. This you've got a shaft that you don't have to fetch the bottom end of, but they can stand up to a heck of a lot of abuse.
See how it handles the abuse, shall we? Pretty damn well.
Again, that guts to contact, yeah. And so for you, tip heavy just is not a good thing.
No.
You're not then having to fetch the toe, wrap it over. That one allows you just to rotate, collect it, and leave the face there. 2 years ago, I almost put the 360 M5 into the bag. Yeah.
The FX, and it just always felt like it wasn't quite. It felt to get the stability at the tip, I just lost the feel because it all went down into the to the tip end. That first swing with that one feels more like what I was hunting.
Right.
That you get the stability down in the bottom third, but without it being heavy down there.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's just that premium materials, that grade of material upscale versus the old FX series.
Yep. Yeah.
You're
definitely.
just in a window they couldn't get to before.
Yep. Couldn't get the effective torque down there with the grade of material and the price point they wanted to hit with the FX range. Yeah. And that's where these come in. They're saying, this is all guns blazing. Yeah, so again, not your finest strike, but and this is where this one suits you more than me. I flight it up a little bit, spin pops. You keeping the spin in the low twos for this. Yeah.
Let me give one more where I actually get a full-on wallop to it.
It's very easy to feel inadequate watching this, but I think this actually highlights where this shaft's geared at. Is for me, go back a few swings, I hit that well. Yes, it's a higher loft than I play, so spin proportionate to the launch angle is not crazy, but I don't get that kind of reaction out of it because I'm just not working it hard enough. That
didn't feel like there was a lot of load and unload, which is often the problem I have with finding a driver shaft. I've played the 125 MSI for 5, 6, 7 years now, because it's so uniform in feel. That's as close as I've found to it. Because where they don't make that shaft anymore, it's become quite difficult for me to find a replacement shaft. That's the closest in feel I've felt to that. Just even at 127.5, there just wasn't that real give out that I'd get. There's other shafts that are in that same kind of bracket in terms of what they claim from a rigidity point of view, that I feel the load and unload through the handle. That just doesn't have it. That is as stable as comes.
But I think that characteristic tracks through the profiles, that each profile, red to green to blue, go kind of back down that way. You're softening the profile, gaining a little bit of load through the mid-lower half, but without that loss of stability at the club head. I think that's a real standout for all these. We're going to go to the extreme end with this. We're going the 42 M0 blue. So this is
a shaft that it wasn't designed for it.
super soft.
But over the last 2 years where there's been a change to how they approach how long drivers approach the product they put in their drivers. They've gone, rather than being once upon a time a triple or quadruple X 65, 70 gram shaft, and that was the answer, keep it super stable. They're actually going down the route of something super light and super soft.
Yeah, and the super light so they can longer range of motion, build speed, and the club come with you.
And there was a couple of long drive pros that put the IW4 in the bag, M0. And
the FX 140.
And then the FX 140, and both of those, when they started moving to that, you just couldn't get hold of them. But the guys who played it said it just never felt, as much as it was good because it was so soft, it almost didn't feel high enough grade material enough to be able to control where the face was going.
And with the extremity of the load.
We are talking 150 something mile an hour that they're swinging it at, so you know, we're not talking about the average person. I think this shaft is very much geared for those guys, because it is, you do the traditional waggle test and it goes all over the place.
Well, that's...
but as soon as you actually swing it, doesn't necessarily match up to that.
Yeah, and one of the, as I said, we'll do the traditional waggle test, as I'll come on a bit, is that it may or may not be visible from the camera, but you waggle it a little bit. If I move the handle slightly, and that really goes. And part of that with this shaft is, and I've always found with the very soft shaft, so I'm used to that, as you are used to that tighter, firmer feel, is if I can ignore the feel and just swing through it,
it works.
That's a bit of the key. I've always felt funny when they get this flex, that the handle moves away and the head stays there, and that automatically freaks me out. But actually, if you can move through it, I think that's always the key with these. But yeah, it is a noodle from the completely inappropriate waggle test, because that's not the way the shaft moves.
Yeah.
But so basically ignore the feel and swing.
Yeah, because what's interesting is even that first check back you did of the takeaway, whereas when you stood there with the waggle test, it's moving all over the place. As soon as you bring that club back, it just stayed on. It didn't have that flex and that rotation. It just stayed bang on line.
That must have been miles out the heel.
Yeah, I think you almost missed it because you didn't quite trust it.
But again,
you're very reactive.
But I didn't notice that strike.
Yes, yeah, it's something I found when we hit this yesterday. There was just there wasn't an awareness, because that's unfair, because they're doing such a great job of it, but it's just it doesn't have that torque rotation that you'd get normally out of something this light.
Yeah, so my problem is I react. I'm going to do one more to see if I can ignore it. I react to the feel, and that's the bit where for some players you can't ignore the flex. The flex plays a part in the confidence to, so if I feel that wobble, I'm automatically adjusting. If I can just ignore this. I end up waiting for things, but actually again, like that was a more solid contact.
And actually
still a little heely.
3-3 on spin versus, we were in the green in the 60, you were at 2.8, so it's not like it's a 40 gram shaft that's M0 that's really kicking it up and chucking the spin up by 1,000 that you'd potentially see if you went to most other 40 gram options out there.
Yeah, where they kind of kick under, they don't go toe over, they kick under. That's normally where the launch and spin goes through the roof, and that's not for that strike, because that is heely. That's which way face is closed but it's faded. That's not bad at all. And again, you get that load, you get that kind of almost load back as you start back, then you feel it kick back the other way, and then as you start down you can feel it really give, and yes, you get that sense of unload, but it's not at the club head, it's through the body of the shaft rather than the tip wobbling.
Right, shall I give this I'll give this a couple of normal speed, and then I'll go after one and see what happens. Yeah, I mean, immediately everyone always does it, don't they? They do that wipe, and you can really feel it.
Wiping the grooves on a wedge. We all do it.
Yeah, it doesn't really. Ignore that one, please. That was me trying to react to it.
But I think that's the bit that shows what flex does. The flex side of things is it takes, and this is not a shaft that we're going to see many of golfers like you or I using. And this is going to be more of a moderate speed, quieter, so more single plane, quieter build-up player that wants to get that feel of load and kick, it's going to feel less alien to basically the sort of golfer that it's most aimed at.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, you just don't get that sound out of any other shaft that weight that I'm aware of.
No.
Again, open face and 3-3 for you.
Very
Bearing in
impressive.
mind, normally with Matt, the spin goes absolutely into orbit with anything open.
Right. Chase one and see what happens.
Yeah, again, that's...
It's a little low on the head.
Considering for the kind of swing that is, you'd be in a 6 degree, not a 9 degree. To put it into context, but again, the stability through the ball, there's no...
Look at that ball speed retention, 146 smash.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And that's normally where the tail off would happen. Mine dropped because I couldn't find the middle of the face with it. But I've got, for someone like me where you've got rotation, that does create a little bit more droop. It creates a little bit more, it's a little harder for a golfer like me to find the middle of the face with a shaft that's got that amount of load to it. Someone who's more body rotation, less of a pull on the handle, that's then when this sort of thing comes into its own.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
It's a very it's a very impressive consistency of feel through the whole range. I think that's the bit that stands out to me. Is you've got the stability and impact, the lack of harshness. Okay, the red's very, very stable. It's not, you're not going to find it harsh at the tip end at the contact point. The harshness in the red comes in the handle. Can you get enough load into it to get something back from the shaft? But that progression of design through, but retaining that absolute stability and impact, I think is very, very impressive. Yeah,
very good job. Very good job.
Very, very interesting shaft. Very well done, Accra. You know, always been known for kind of top grade materials. Only ever dealt through fitters and builders as a result of that as well. So you will not find these at loads of outlets across the world. They do restrict who has access to them. So if you do want to have a test out of them, do go on Accra's website and have a look at the dealers, or make contact with them, or someone who's listed on their website as to who's got them. But really interesting shafts. You know, price point wise, not ridiculous. They're kind of up there around the kind of the Ventus Speeder NX kind of range as sort of a benchmark. They're not prohibitively dear in comparison to other really top grade shafts. They look good as well.
Yes.
The finish is nice.
Yeah, as much as they are one colour, and some people might look at the red and the green and go, "Oh, I'm not sure I want that." It's not a gloss finish. It's not a bright, leery. You know, it's not a light green or a light red. It is quite a nice dulled out finish that actually even stood over the ball. You don't really notice the red or the green when you look down on it.
Yeah, I think just an all-around great job. So anyone looking to test them, let us know. Come in, try them out, and see if the performance for you backs up the tech that's in them. But you know, great materials, great product. Well done, Accra.